The Pope and Young Club wants to welcome you as we rally together to ensure our bow hunting opportunities for today and tomorrow. You've come to the podcast that believes in preserving, protecting, and promoting the passion for bow hunting. Join us as we strive to be the voice of today's bow hunter. This is the Pope and Young Podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Pope and Young Podcast. Jason Roundsville here, joined as always by my co-host Dylan Ray. And we have with us today a guest with us is Frank Bennett. Frank, welcome to the Pope and Young Podcast.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, just for folks who aren't aware of what you've done out there, give us the 30-second elevator pitch for Frank Bennett.
Well, my elevator pitch is I've been really fortunate to travel quite a bit of the world doing some pretty adventurous bow hunts over the course of my life. Unfortunately, when you're younger, you don't have maybe the money, but you have more time. And now as you get older, you have the money, but you don't have the time. You got it's a funny kind of game to play to make real life work with the things that you really love to do. But I've been really fortunate. I've been in New Zealand, Africa, obviously Canada, and then all over the Midwest and the West, and hunting recently, just more than anything, elk. I've been chasing a lot of elk recently. So that's kind of become my passion lately.
Jason, that's how I was introduced to Frank. He sent the Pope and Young page just this giant bull that he shot, and I'm like, good Lord. And so I went to his page, and I'm like, man, he's a stud. We got to have him on the podcast.
Nice. It all started with one big elk. That's what you're telling me.
Well, I think it started with one elk experience. It's being from the East, it's interesting to try to get involved with what Western hunting is and the draws, because we don't have that here. I want to go hunting. I purchase a license and I can go whitetail hunting. And that's more or less, from here, basically out to say, Illinois is where that kind of draw thing happens. But we're not familiar with that. So I started putting in for draws, at a young age, and I never drew anything. And finally got the first one maybe 8 years after my first application. It didn't take very long, and I was completely just obsessed and hooked with the whole Western stalk, spot and stalk deal. Like that seemed to fit right into how I'm made up. I've been an athlete my whole life, and I feel like I'm a good hunter or whatnot. So that allowed me to apply some of my I think innate abilities. And then, I'm just fortunate enough to grow up in an area with some really, really good shooters, target shooters in particular around here. So to learn from some of these guys, and just being a bow hunter my whole life, those two abilities to spot and stalk, and to actually be able to shoot when you get to a position to kill something, when that lines up, it's pretty special.
Yes, it is. And especially when they're as big as an elk.
Well, yeah. Yeah. We got a huge kill zone, right? But man, it seems like an awful lot of them are wounded. So, but not for me recently, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's why the constant practice comes into play. Know your equipment, know your limits, and it's the thing about archery. It's not how far you can shoot; it's how close you can get. And they're huge, man. You see an elk at 60 yards, and you think that thing's right there. I've seen people so many times say, oh man, it was 30 yards. I was like, no, man, that was 65.
That was the first thing with hunting out West was the distances, that everything seems like it's right on top of you, but it's 120 yards away. You feel like that, you just, and it's like that, and you have those far shots out there, and it's a discipline to continue to move a little bit closer. But sometimes you're forced to make a shot, which, if you are an archer and you're practicing, you have a comfort level. I practice up to 130 yards here all summer long, and pretty much all year long. So for me, at 85 yards to 90 yards, I feel like, I'm pretty confident with that shot, if that presents itself, barring, any crazy things that's, stuff in the way and so on and so forth. But a couple of years back, I did kill a 342 elk at about 87 yards, and that was with a heart shot, and he didn't go 60 yards. So, that's just a relative thing to where you feel confident, and I feel okay.
Yeah. So you just need to be sneakier, Frank.
Well, up until this year, I hadn't gotten close enough to kill one where I can hear him breathing, and I just started to, come to the terms with, me. I'm not that good of a hunter. And then everything seemed to be, my shots are 63 yards, 75 yards, 87 yards, 77 yards. And then finally this year within 25 yards, finally.
Yeah.
But,
now just be glad you're not a trad guy, because they're 20 and in.
I know. And you know what? Some of these guys, I was in the wilderness last year with a guy, and to each his own, to each his own, shoot what you shoot. But I've had the smaller one, I've had some little bulls get really close, to where they're breathing on you. And that's, goes to say what the type of units that I hunt, the type of animals that I'm wanting to hold out for are, I think, indicative of what that tag is worthy of. Now, as a whitetail hunter, you can't kill a 200-inch whitetail when you hunt in an area that has 110-inch genetics. So you'd be a fool to be holding out for that. However, when I draw a tag or if I'm buying a landowner permit or something, and I'm buying it in a unit where giants exist, well, then you can believe it that I will be hunting my entire time, especially when we find one for that, particular animal.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing how many guys that chase them and they're like, didn't get one, didn't even draw my bow, but that's just the season. And
it's pretty amazing. Honestly, I think elk hunting is one of the most humbling things that I've done. You have a level of, I'm trying to think of the word here. You have a level of confidence in yourself and your abilities. And then, sometimes it all falls right in there and you're like, oh, I know I was going to do this. And sometimes you can hunt. We did, the one year was 187 miles, I think, in like 12 days on foot. And I never even drew my bow, but in the same thing, it wasn't a bad trip. It was a fantastic trip. Killing elk is like 5% of that trip for me personally. 95% of it's the adventure. We just do stuff on our backpacks and we walk the whole unit. We don't drive. There's no roads in the units that I hunt in. So, it's pretty exciting. It's changed my life for the better. It's made me more active in physicalness, my physical fitness for the entire season, as opposed to just getting ready for a season. Because I just turned actually 43 today. It's a young man's unit, and be able to.
Wait a second, Jason. Now we've made it to the point where guys want to spend their birthday with us on the podcast. We've made it, dude.
We should have had candles.
Hey,
do what?
I kept postponing the time so I can get this day.
Oh, happy birthday to you, man.
Happy birthday.
I appreciate it.
Here's the big question. Do you ever get confused for Cameron Hanes? Because you look a lot like him.
I get some of it. I'm not as cool as Cameron Hanes, I guess. So I do get some of that. But I was doing me before I knew who Cameron Hanes was. So, that's kind of like a cool thing now, it seems like. And in the outdoor industry is to be like this physically fit person. But I mean, I've been doing this my whole life. And then it just so happens that, I've met Cameron Hanes and I have a couple buddies that are close friends with him, and super, super great guy. I think he's fantastic for, for archery, for the outdoor industry in particular. He's got a huge platform and it seems like a really squared head on his shoulders about things. But yeah, no, I do get that sometimes. Definitely not trying to be that guy, but yeah.
No, I meant that as in like you tuck the hair back, man. You look just like him in the face, man.
A couple of different ones. I'd like to have some of those hunt. I'd like to hunt the San Carlos like Cameron.
Tell us a little bit about Wild Adrenaline.
So Wild Adrenaline was a company that was started by my partner at the time, was Bob Peronish. He's a guy from Pennsylvania. He's a design artist and he's a school teacher. And we were doing we were going to do some TV production stuff, and we had a couple of ins in the outdoor industry with some of the guys over at Outtech. I'm sure you guys are familiar with that marketing company and stuff like that. And we had some avenues to get some of our stuff onto TV and to actually produce shows for a couple different shows. And we did this for quite a little bit of time. It's kind of slowed down a little bit. You know, the outdoor industry is, man, it's a tough gig. You know, it's a real who's your friend kind of industry, you know, and if your friends aren't the friends that are, you know, kind of calling the shots, it's really difficult to kind of get your foot in the door there, you know. Everyone thinks, you know, and I've been doing this I've been in the outdoor industry some form or the other for the past maybe 15 years. And the first year, you know, you go to ATA, you know, and you're a younger man, you think that the archery industry and outdoors in general is such a huge business, and it's all under one roof. And that roof is, you know, whatever 20,000 square foot building. And it's very, very, very tight knit group of people. And it's hard to crack that egg.
Yeah. The outdoor industry is huge and small all at the same time.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I find it interesting. Me and Jason will be talking, and I'm not going to say, well, he's Jason, how do I say this nicely?
I'm not sure. How do you say it nicely?
He's of the older generation.
Now at Pope and Young, I'm one of the young guys.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
But no, you know, we're talking about guys, and you know, I'll say a name, and Jason's like, never heard of him. And that makes you think it's this huge industry, because I'm like, what do you mean you've never heard of them? And then he'll say somebody, I'm like, I've never heard of them. And he's like, what do you mean, dude? They were around. Oh my gosh, they've been around and it makes you think it's this ginormous industry. But yet once you get inside of it, like, it doesn't take long. I mean, if you start screwing people over, it doesn't take long for people to find out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I've found out, you know, unfortunately you find out real quick who the snakes are. And there's plenty of them. You know, there's plenty of guys in this deal that are, man, they pour that potion on you and you kind of get you going, and they're really just manipulating you and using you and what you're able to do for them. And it's unfortunate. And then but you know, conversely, I have met just some of my absolute best friends, and they come directly through the hunting industry. And it was just related that I was formed. And sometimes you meet just the absolute most genuine people. And I'm sure you guys understand this too, a bow hunting brotherhood with people, with other men. You know, there's something there to be said when you have a hunt with somebody, or you have a similar experience with someone, you can really, really relate to them on a different level. I think it's pretty special. And those guys tend to hang around for the rest of your life. And I've been fortunate to meet a handful of those kind of guys.
Yeah, absolutely. No, there's nothing like, I mean, when you get to share a hunting camp with somebody, like you build a relationship that can't be built anywhere else. I mean, that's, and people outside the hunting community don't understand that, but like, you know, you make these friends, and you build these friends inside the industry, and you're friends. But then if you ever get to go on a hunt with them and share a camp with them, then it's like, man, you're the best of friends, you know? And some of my best friends, my wife's like, you only see them twice a year. And I'm like, I know, but those 2 times we're hunting, you know, that's different.
Yeah.
And that memory lasts, you know, all year long. You could see a guy every day and not have any kind of relations with him.
Right.
And then on top of that, you get to see what another man is made of. You know, everyone thinks they are who they are until that moment comes. And when we're out west in particular, when I talk about this, I've brought some guys out hunting out there, and I've met some other guys out, you know, in the wilderness area. And you get to see what a person's made of out there for sure, because if you quit, if you're a little bit weak in your mind, it's over. And you watch guys that are pretty tough and they just fall apart. And then you see other guys that'll surprise the hell out of you. And really, those are the guys for me that I want to be around. You know, the guys my friends that I hunt with out there, a couple of the Chapel brothers and stuff from New Mexico area, you know, these guys are just, they go as hard as anybody else will go. And as hard as you can go, they'll go. And when you have that with another guy, and it's like a special bond, and we're sleeping on the ground and it's snowing, hailing, and raining on us, and he's there with you, your buddy's right with you, and he's maybe not with a bow, but you guys are doing it together. And that's something that you can pretty much, you'll take to your grave. And that kind of respect is only gained and earned on those mountains for sure.
Yeah. See, I take for granted, I grew up doing that. So like, you know, running up the hills, chasing elk, and it's just something that I was pretty fortunate enough to be able to do from a young age on.
And then I think that something I take for granted on the flip side, is, a whitetail camp. You hunt in the mornings, you hunt in the evenings. You're hanging out at camp all day. You're hanging out at night, in a cabin, and you're playing cards or grilling out or whatever. And, it's a complete different kind of camaraderie, but you still build that inside of a complete different camp. And then those are the types of things I take for granted. I bring somebody from out west to share a whitetail camp with, and they're like, dude, this is the best thing ever. Like, I never get to play cornhole on the mountain. And I'm like, well, welcome to the Midwest, and I take those things for granted. And then when I head out west, I'm like you, Frank, I'm just, in awe of sharing a tent on the side of a mountain with somebody. And they're like, what do you mean, dude? This is how I live,
That's right. I've so through the hunting industry, I was pro staff and I was sponsored by Easton and Hoyt for about 8 years, and I got fortunate enough to meet some of the guys, and some guys don't last. The outdoor industry is a quick rotation. A quick rotation of people in the outdoor industry. So guys are reps for a year, 2 years, 3 years, and then they move on to another kind of gig. But I was fortunate enough to meet like a Western hunting legend, this kid, Sean Munson. He was like one of the original Hoyt guys on the Hoyt banners. And, he's killed over, 3 or 4 different 200-inch, mule deer and stuff out west. And this guy is just, he's everything a Western hunter is. He's 6'5", he's lean, he gets up at the Wasatch Mountains in Utah, and it's special. Well, I brought him here to New Jersey where we hunt people's backyards. And we walked him through one of my friend's houses, through the kitchen, out across the patio by the pool, and put him in a ground blind. And now he's got his pack on, like he's ready to go walk across the country. But like, the kids are playing in the pool, and he's like, is this really going to happen like this? Like, yeah, man, this is how it is, And then he texts me 15 minutes later, there's 30 deer out in front of me in the ground blind here. And I think he goes, I bet I got all the deer when I was sitting across the street in another cul-de-sac in another spot. And I said, well, I got 30 of them underneath me. And so to him, that was the coolest thing he'd ever done. He said to his buddies, you've never seen anything like this, because we didn't have to walk 10 miles to go find a deer. I drove to a house, I walked you through a house into a ground blind. And, each experience is special in its own way. And I think a lot of those camps, like you said, like these whitetail camps and bear camps and stuff like that are very similar, where you really get to meet some special people. And I think hunters in general, I think, have the best at heart when it comes to, conservation and certain things, and a lot of great opinions and a lot of like-minded people in the outdoor industry.
You guys got some giant bears there in Jersey, don't you?
Man, we got
world record.
Yeah, world class. And one of the guys that's our Pope and Young measurer here that's in my area, his name's Mark Kroniak. Mark,
Lord.
Yeah, he's so Mark is a good friend of mine. He lives not very far from me, and we've done some bear hunts together, some do-it-yourself hunts in Quebec and stuff like that. But around here, like, he has killed just some absolute slobs, like stuff, and he's killed multiple 6+ bears here in New Jersey. So,
God,
pound bears, and then of course I think, well, the world record I think was like a 900-pound bear, but he was tagged in New Jersey, but he wound up getting killed, I think, in PA, like something in the 900-pound kind of bear.
That's a big bear. I don't care where you are.
We don't typically have like a wintering season here where bears are generally hibernating. I think that's one of the huge things here, that the bear don't really go to bed for a long time here, so they get a chance to continue to eat. The food is always kind of viable. Plus, these bears live in people's yards too, so they're in garbage cans and that kind of stuff. But
now, well, hold on, I gotta tell you a story first before I ask you this question. So Mark actually bow hunts in my hometown for whitetails, and I get a text message from somebody from my church, and they're like, hey, dude, you got some issues. I'm like, what do you mean? And they're like, this guy come in, she was waitressing at a restaurant. She said, this guy come in looking for you. And I'm like, what do you mean? And she said, yeah, this guy said he was in town, and he had some issues with you, and he's looking for you. And I'm like, what's going on here? Turns out it was Mark just coming into town, stirring up trouble.
He is a character. Like,
he's a hoot, man.
Very, very funny guy, and honestly can pretty much get you beat up on a regular basis. Like,
you're not wrong.
his mouth doesn't stop. And it's like, man, I've traveled quite a bit with him, and boy, you got to tell him, it's like, you're on your own here. Like this, somebody starts swinging here, you're getting beat up, because I'm not jumping in for. He's a wise ass. He's bad. He's just a funny.
I told him, I'm like, man, this is my hometown. Like you start talking. I live in a town of 6,000 people. I'm like, you start telling stuff like that, it'll get around that I owe you people money and stuff.
That's
No, what I was going to ask you though, bear seasons were closed down there for a couple years, weren't they?
Yeah, they're closed now. On state lands here now. The governor here. This is a big ordeal here. So wherever you go to bear hunt, you have to check a bear in here. So it has to go to a checking station. And when you go to those checking stations, the protesters and stuff that are there, I mean, it gets violent. Every bear that comes in there, they're throwing paint on your truck, and it's crazy here. And this state, unfortunately, is, politics aside, but this state is got a lot of liberal policies, and it's really run by the cities. Unfortunately, the people that are outside the cities don't feel the same way, but the people that are in the cities, they govern on feelings as opposed to actual statistics. Yeah. This past year, the amount of bear on like domestic animal attacks in New Jersey is skyrocketed, but you're not going to hear too much about that, but it's just the way it is. You have to manage a bear like you have to manage a deer. It has to be done that way. Otherwise, you're going to have crazy incidences that continue to happen here. But this state's too liberal to want to understand that. But they do. I think pretty sure they allow private land hunting for bear. But New Jersey, to hunt a bear, on private land is pretty difficult. We have a lot of state land up North Jersey where the bear exists here, and that's where the big ones are.
Well, you sit next to the swimming pool.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I live in central New Jersey yet. I think that there's been a handful of bear around here that have been spotted, but not in a huntable population.
Yeah.
You think the deer are tame. Some of these bear are really like locals. Like they'll walk, middle of the like people get school bus and like, oh, there's whatever the name of the bear is, walking down the street every day. The same bear. And I know at one time when I spoke with a couple of biologists here, there was a dozen bear in New Jersey that were above 800 pounds, and two of them that they had tagged that were over 1,000 pounds.
God.
And so I asked the guy, what does a 1,000-pound bear look like? I've killed a handful of bears, in the 400-pound range or whatever in Canada. And he said, looks like, see that truck over there? I said, yeah. He goes, that's my Durango. It looks just like that walking down the street, so. And this is like in neighborhoods, residential neighborhoods.
Yeah.
So definitely brings a little spice to that. And it's kind of taken off. That kind of hunting has taken off a little bit. You'll see quite a bit of that on the Outdoor Channel and stuff now, where guys are hunting more in people's yards and stuff like that. It's kind of that suburban hunting deal.
I watched the TV show. I wish I could remember the name of it. And it was only like 2 seasons, but I think it was in Jersey. And they like hunted in people's backyards.
Yeah,
that's not exactly the Kinnetrek ad that you're thinking of typically when you think of hunting.
The funny thing is, everybody gets dressed up like we were going to walk across the country. So
yeah,
you got all the gear on for sure.
Well,
now,
you gotta have the Gore-Tex if you're within splash distance of the pool.
I would say, the kid. Half gainer in there and splashes all the side of your boot or something like that. You don't want to have soggy feet walking 8 feet to your pickup truck. So
yeah, for sure, and especially if you got to go through the kitchen.
Now we're talking. We want to drag.
Somebody put out a post. I don't remember who it was. It was one of the Western. It might have been Kinnetrek, or I don't remember. And they said it was basically, how do you pack out your animal? Do you quarter it out in the field? Do you? And I commented on there and said, I hunt in the Midwest. I back my truck up to it and load it up and pull out.
Right. And honestly, that's like, they have a hard time out West. A lot of guys wanting to hear this stuff, but, the majority of hunters are East. We're East. Like Pennsylvania has hunters in the United States. And honestly, per square mile, if you grab New Jersey, I'm going to say that we're pretty far up there too, but we get like a bad rap because, we're the city and we're New York and we're this kind of stuff. But, I've been, whacking, briars for my whole life. I've been hunting my whole life. Those guys can't tell me they've been hunting harder than I've been hunting my whole life. So, when you go out west, it's something. I don't know if it's something you got to prove or something on those lines, but those guys don't want to believe any of that stuff exists east, but it does, and that was my pitch to a lot of these companies when I was trying to solicit stuff for sponsors, which, is maybe one of the most degrading things I've ever had to do in my life. But any case,
sorry,
yeah,
go ahead.
That's all right. Just to tell those guys that, like, I'm looking to get your product, I'm a guy from the East. You're selling that product to me. Like, I'm the guy that doesn't know how to hunt out West. We're, coming out West to us is like going to the moon. So we're trying to understand it, and I can push that product here or whatever. But it was a tough gig because, Western hunters are Western hunters, and if you know what I mean, then, you always got to do is ask them, a lot of them anyway, and they'll tell you. So,
yeah. PA has 20.5 hunters per square mile. Everything west of Missouri has between 0 to 4 hunters per square mile.
They call it the Orange Army during like gun season when you were hunting PA and stuff like that. And New Jersey New Jersey's become more populated, obviously, as I've gotten older. But when I was younger, we did the same thing, and we were doing a lot of deer drives and stuff like that with gangs of guys, like 30, 40 guys in the back of pickup trucks, and lining stuff up and driving deer everywhere and stuff like that. But New Jersey, recently, and you'll see continue to be more and more of a bow hunting state because land is at such a high premium here. That
Jersey has 5.5 bow hunters per square mile.
Yeah, you can't. Big Jersey. I've killed. I've been fortunate to kill some pretty decent sized whitetail here. One of my largest is 161-inch whitetail here, and I killed that watching a guy have coffee in the morning. So, and I can see him clear as day from my tree stand. Legally, of course, because you have to be. I think it's like 150 feet or something like that now from a house. But yeah, I mean, I watch people come underneath me on horseback, and it's crazy. People walking through parks, and it's a different kind of hunting. It's a different thing.
Is that where you have to put your tree stand up just a little bit higher so that you can clear the playground equipment?
It's guys like this. Guys like this. They bag on us.
Hey.
Yeah, you do it. It's kind of like that Marine mentality or whatever. You have to, kind of overcome and adapt, and you do. So, all right. So I'm not hunting in Kansas. Every deer in New Jersey looks up. I mean, that's a part of their DNA. Kansas, I've had like some giants just come right at me, like I'm waving my hands basically, and they don't even bother you. But here, every deer is a little bit more educated, it seems like. But yeah, you have to get out of the way of the vehicles and the pedestrians walking underneath your tree stands. So, sure.
I gotta ask, Jason. The article that I'm looking at is written by Kip Adams, from NDA. He's been on the show before.
Yeah.
And I gotta ask him what's going on here, because on the graph there's only one state that's gray, and that's the state I grew up in, Arkansas. And I'm like, what does gray mean? And I go and it says no data, and I'm like, what the heck does that mean? We're the only state that doesn't have data.
I don't think anybody in Arkansas hunts deer. They're all chasing ducks.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to crack some redneck joke about how they probably couldn't read the survey or something.
I'm just going to leave that. Last time I said anything negative at all about Arkansas, I got, phone calls from all over the country. So I'm just going to leave Arkansas alone this time.
Good. It's the only state mentioned in the Bible, right?
How so?
Noah looked out of the Arkansas.
And there you have it.
Wow. Okay.
The show was different than the 7:30 show.
That's okay. You're banned from ever saying that again on this program.
Okay.
I got a good buddy there in Arkansas, and he's a duck man. And then now, I guess pigs and stuff like that. He's been hunting a lot of pigs.
Yeah, it's bad. It's real bad.
Crazy. And he's got a nice farm there that he does have quite a few whitetails, he said, but the pigs just have run every whitetail, clear off of the properties.
Yeah.
Whether it be physically run them off or just, forage the, everything, where the deer have nothing to eat there. So
right.
That's a problem. Starting here in New Jersey, in the southern New Jersey now, the pigs are starting to come in. So, that remains to be seen how the geniuses that run our conservatory here can handle that. But
I saw an article the other day, and I've been in this industry a long time. My degree's in wildlife science, and I saw an article that said they might, in order to more effectively manage the wild pigs, stopping hunting may help the effectiveness of management. And I'm like, this
wow.
doesn't make any sense. And the whole article, if you read it from a hunter's perspective, the whole article is like, okay, so hunters can have a major impact. However, we care enough about the resource that we want to perpetuate the resource. So they don't want to take all the pigs out because they want to keep the hunting available. It was something where it was just,
wow. It is completely illegal. It's completely illegal if you see a pig in Kansas to shoot it. Reason being is because, and it does make a lot of sense. If you see a sonder of 20 pigs and you shoot one, now they're going to split up into 2 groups of 10. And then if another hunter shoots at them, now that's 2 groups of 5. And then if a hunter shoots over here, it's 2 groups of 5. Well, now you have 4 different groups of pigs when you could just call the state. They'll come in and kill all 20 of them with a chopper, and we keep the population gone. And Kansas doesn't have any pigs because they handle it really well. Now, I don't
What if you see 2 pigs and you just shoot them both?
There you go.
Or you just wait and then you call in and have the state pay somebody to do what you could have done.
Well, yeah. I think each one of those situations is unique because, like say, Kansas might have the resources to do that. And in Kansas, I mean, yeah, a helicopter's going to work, but I guarantee it's not going to work here.
Oh, yeah. No way.
I know right now in the laws in New Jersey, you're allowed to indiscriminately shoot them because they know the problem that's going to create here inevitably, because every other state that they're in like that, it gets into them so bad. But that being said, they have just a way of just mismanaging resources in these states and some of these real, like my state in particular, liberal states, the way they do it. For instance, in Princeton, New Jersey, Princeton University is right there and stuff like that. That deer population is absurd. It's probably 10 to 15 to every human that exists in PA. And instead of allowing bow hunting, which they outlawed, and they outlawed hunting in the Princeton area, they decided to hire sharpshooters to come in and these these eradication companies or whatever, and they were doing birth control. They were shooting them with darts with birth control and birth control pills and feeders. They were doing all this crazy stuff, right down to some of the most grotesque stuff you can ever imagine, where they're netting these things and drilling them out. Like, it's like there's a resource there. People want to hunt these places. People want to bow hunt these places. You're even going to know in most cases that a bow hunter's even there. Make some money off of this thing. We're the largest part of conservation in this country, and these people are, just because it doesn't agree with them, are unwilling to acknowledge that, and it's pretty sad.
Yeah, and you see that it's just like the pig example. It's like, okay, here's a source of A, revenue, B, outdoor recreation. I mean, there's people buying gas, buying snack. All the things you do to go on a trip. And then instead of all the good things that come of it, they're spending taxpayer dollars to hire somebody to do what someone else would have paid to do. And that's the part I have a problem with. And it's oftentimes, like you mentioned, it's not the professional management directive. It's the emotional reaction of the public that drives that.
I'm waiting for the day that we as a hunters, as a group of us, because there's an awful lot of us, we become proactive in this fight. It seems that our voice is never heard. And we're the largest contributors to conservation in this country. So why is it that we're not out there yelling? We're always seem to be, and I don't know if it's a conservative thing or not, but we're always the ones on defense. It's always us trying to defend our way instead of being proactive in it and saying, like, no, we have a buying power here. Like, these activist groups can't compete with us, because in the long run, it's money, and money is what does it. So we are here to say that we're spending $7 billion a year in an industry. So we have a big voice here, but we just don't ever use it. We don't ever wield that stick, and it's unfortunate. And there has to be. That's what I said. We got talking about campaigns and stuff like that. I love seeing guys like that. People. They got a lot of people that hate on that stuff, and hate on these guys, and maybe it's jealousy or whatever it is. But man, I don't have any jealousy for that guy. I think that guy's great. I think he's in a perfect position, and he speaks the way I want to speak, and he says the things I want to say because he has a platform to do it. And I think we need more people doing that, as opposed to, we get an awful lot of bickering because as a hunting group, it seems like, guys are very matter of fact, my way is the right way and your way is the wrong way kind of deal, as opposed to saying we're all doing the same thing and it can be done 1,000 different ways, and your way might be right and so my way also. But in the end, we're all kind of governed for the same thing here. And it just seems, like I said, like the bear hunt got kicked out in New Jersey. Well, I can tell you this, there's probably 100 times more hunters than there are activists in New Jersey fighting against the bear, but somehow the bear, they got outed in New Jersey. So how did that happen? We let that happen.
It's because, we have, I think, a lot of hunters just, they believe in the right thing, and they're like, oh, well, you know what? They're making a lot of noise over there, but these people have to be smart enough to realize that controlling the bear population is a good thing. And they don't. The people you're talking to, they don't care. It has nothing to do with facts, figures, science, or anything else. It is a knee-jerk gut reaction to how it makes them feel. And that is the difference, is we keep hoping that people will wake up and look at this and say, hey, this doesn't make any sense, that we're going to pay somebody to do something what they'd have done, what they would have paid to do. But it just doesn't register. They're never going to understand the way we think.
We had this conversation, Frank, with Hal for Wildlife a few episodes back, and that was his exact point. Was he hopes that one day, not only will we not always have to be on the defense, but eventually we can be on the offense, and we can take it to them saying, hey, look, these bears in New Jersey, they're running out of their natural food sources. That's why they're eating your puppies. They're running out of natural food sources. That's why they're digging in your garbage, and that's why they're in your neighborhoods, because there's no food out in the wilderness for them. He's hoping, and we as hunters should be hoping, that one day we won't always have to be on the back pedal, but eventually we can be the ones pushing forward. But we've got a lot of ground to make up.
I think, we have a lot of ground to make up, and I think that it takes some people like we're used to be fortunate in this area. We had a guy like Donald Trump Jr., and I've been fortunate to meet him a handful of times at the Western Hunting Expo out in Utah every year that I go to and stuff. And these guys, like, in this area, I don't know if you guys are familiar with like Campfire or any of these other places, but that's where the National Forestry Service was written for the United States, and like conservation was written right there. It was written by Theodore Roosevelt, and it was written by Abercrombie and Fitch. They're not a clothing company; they were an actual outfitter in the United States, and they wrote our forestry services is written right in this area where I live. Just north of me here, and there's some prominent people here, but for some reason, we just don't have a voice here, and it's unfortunate. It's a liberal controlled area, and their beliefs are not our beliefs. And I'm honestly, recently I've been coming to the fact that they're never going to believe what we believe. That's never going to change. It's never going to be a thing with allowing people to live their lives. They're always going to want to impose themselves in your life, and that's the way it is. So in order to deal with that, we're going to have to stand up for ourselves one day. That's just what it comes down to: stand up for our own beliefs, and then start putting people in positions and elected officials in positions that believe the things we believe. Because you just have to take a couple animals in this country, for example. If you're a turkey hunter, or if you're an elk hunter, or now even a sheep hunter, now conservation has saved these animals. Okay, hunting has saved these animals, and the amount of animals prior to the Conservation Acts to now is tripled, tenfold on most of these animals. Out west, it'd be hard to find an elk, 20 years, 30 years ago. Even in New Jersey, my grandfather, they would talk about even seeing a deer here. And like when you got one, this was like, you're talking like straight up like redneck, like Fred Bear time kind of crazy stuff. They'd strap that thing to the hood of their truck and drive it around town for a week. And it was the coolest thing that everyone's like, oh, wow,
Arkansas.
Dan Bennett got a deer this year. And people are like, holy cow, I don't even know there's a deer live here. To now, like anytime during the day in my yard, I can have 15 or 20 deer. They're like, like an invasion now. But that is a product of conservation. That is a product of putting a value on something so that people will see it not just as a pest or something and just shoot it, sporadically, to saying, okay, this thing has value to it. Every year there's a hunting license and there's gear and there's things that can go along to making this animal worth just more than, shooting him and leaving it on the side of the road kind of thing, And as a prime example of that, when I go to Africa, those animals, like you look at a rhino or something like that, where they have invested money in hunting, elephants in particular, in Botswana, those kind of places where I go, those animals aren't shot anymore indiscriminately. They're kept by the villagers because they know there's a very value to that animal, and they won't just get rid of it for nothing. It's worth something to them. And until we do that here, this is just policy that they're going to have is they're going to shoot these, you're going to shoot whatever they can, or they're not going to let you do it because that's something that we enjoy. They're going to pay somebody else to do it in a way that they think is going to happen. I mean, it's got to be one of the dumbest things I've ever heard of, birth control for deer as a population control. When you can have a guy that'll pay $45 for a license and he'll shoot 5 or 6 of them, so.
And I was in Botswana during the closure, and it was amazing. Like, people are like, oh, save the elephants. And the people that say that have absolutely no idea what saving the elephants and the detrimental effects that has all over entire countries of Africa. Botswana, there were villages you drive by and he's like, man, this used to be a village, but when they shut down elephant hunting, there's nothing here for the people. So they left. There is no longer even a village there. And people don't have an understanding that it's bigger than one elephant. And, elephant's not on my bucket list, but the ability to, whether it's elephants or deer or whatever it happens to be, like you say, it provides a value. And man, nobody's poaching elephants in those areas because the village won't allow it. Right. I mean, if you do, you'd be ostracized. And because they need the meat, they need the jobs, they need the income, they need that sustainability for their whole village.
I think we need to do, and that's a part of it. I think we need to do a better way of letting people understand what it is that a hunter does, what it is that we contribute, aside from just the killing part of it is, like you said, like that village gets the meat, the village gets the money. That money doesn't go to the outfitter, all of it. That outfitter is paying those villagers and employs partly employs some of them. Real quick story about that. I went to Africa the first year, was just after that dentist shot the lion or whatnot outside of Kruger, I think Kruger National Park there. And so I went and I asked the guy, like, what do you think about this Cecil, lion or whatever? And, his response to me, like, who the hell is Cecil? I was like, well, this lion, this special lion that was in the, he said, yeah, no, he goes, that's an American story. That's not a story. Right. But right. We've made every animal into Disney here. And it's, unfortunately it's a surprise to the left. I think when they see that, that's, every animal's not Disney, that's not how that works, but it's I think the United States in general around the world makes these stories up that get behind these special interest groups. And it's like, it doesn't exist like that everywhere else. The American internationally in hunting employs a lot of people. And I've South Africa that are really hurting right now because of, the restrictions and stuff with COVID and so on and so forth. But even prior to that, with, exporting cats and stuff like that out of South Africa, it really destroys the livelihood of these places, and that's about governing off of feelings and not facts. And that's unfortunate because it's happening an awful lot. Seems a little bit.
You can even look at Canada and see that with, the border closings. We've got a lot of outfitter friends who are really struggling. And what happens if we do take away hunting for good? I mean, they're just done. I mean, and people don't understand that. It's just lost on them.
No, people don't care.
No,
Yeah.
they don't. Like, I've had some great friends. I'm sure you guys are familiar with like the Bolin Lewis guys.
Yeah. Alan Bolin.
Yep. So I was going on a mountain goat hunt with those guys, a fly-in camp and stuff like that. Like, one of like these dream hunts of mine. And the week before that I was going to take off is like, COVID kind of hit and all these restrictions and stuff like that. And like, like Spike and those guys, like, this is a really solid business. It's a solid company with, some of the best, mountain goat land, in the world, really. And, they lasted, I think, a half a season after that. And they said, that's it, we're done. They can just see the politics in Canada, where it was going. And out, they and that's a company that was strong. They were as good as it gets when it comes to those mountain hunts like that. And they had enough. So what that does to those to these people, it's just, I know it's just cannot be on accident. It has to be done with some kind of purpose. I think it's unfortunate.
Yeah. And we keep seeing more of it, but that's why we added preserve, promote, and protect to our pillars. So protection is something that we believe in. And, we've been the voice for bow hunting in North America for 60 years. And, we will continue to do that with the refocus. So expect to see us there. One of the things, Frank, that the one question we ask on every show, Dylan, you want to ask this or should I?
I say you ask it, but then I'm going to reword it. I have a better idea. But ask our original
you go
question.
ahead. No, you go ahead. I'd like to hear the reworded version.
Okay. So when you're headed out your back door to go sit in a blind behind your swimming pool, what's one non-traditional hunting item, not a knife or binoculars or a rangefinder, what's one non-traditional hunting item you always have with you?
Sounds like sunscreen, maybe. Or flip-flops. Flip-flops.
No, in New Jersey, it would be more like body oil. It would be like a
Snooki.
Yeah, like baby oil kind of thing here. A lot of people around. So no, I think I wouldn't say it's non-traditional, but it's something really, really special to me that, just has to do with I lost a great friend when I was younger. He was a young man. He was 38 years old. I was 30. He was my best friend, and he died of cancer. And he was a huge bow hunter, and him and I got to spend a lot of time together bow hunting, and that was just kind of how our relationship started or whatever. So I made a point to always carry his picture with me, and a picture of the two of us always together wherever I'm at. And when I'm on these trips and stuff like that, I pull the picture out right around my elk and show my friend that, hey man, like I'm doing it, and you're with me,
Very
not
cool.
just.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
There's a little inspiration for how you get to the next peak. You're like, man, I'm tired, but I can't let him down.
Yeah, that's right. And honestly, he fought really hard. He lost his leg. They took his leg with the cancer and stuff like that, started as a tumor in his leg. And so some of these hunts he, had dreamed about that he'd never be able to get on. And, I give a lot of credit to these guys that do that stuff, and that give their time to just like a wounded warriors and stuff like that. And these guys may never ever experience some of the things I get the opportunity to experience. So when I'm, when you're feeling tired, you're feeling this, you look for some motivation, and you just look to maybe how fortunate you really are. And, things really aren't that bad, and things could be a whole lot worse. Obviously, are on the side of a mountain hunting an elk, so it can't be that bad. But as any kind of motivation to go up the next mountain, bringing my buddy along with me for sure is a huge part of that.
Very cool. Well, Dylan, add that one to the list.
I certainly will.
And then maybe we should put on sunscreen just for good measure.
I got a lot of buddies with lip balm. Lip balm seems
there you go.
Like the thing, and I didn't really think it was important until I started hunting out west, and you get dried out so quick. going up there's the air is just so, the humidity just doesn't exist there. So that moisture sucked out of your lips, and by the end of it, you just all cracked up and you look terrible.
Yeah. There's some places you guys, for you, it's out west. For me, it's back east. But yeah, there's some places, Utah, Nevada, where it's, man, it's dry. And if you're not used to it, boy, you'll just hands crack and nosebleeds and lips cracked.
I learned about the dryness of the Reno of Nevada when we were there for a convention. We Frank, we had a meet and greet for all of our people that were there at convention, and I get a nosebleed. Everything was just so dry. My sinuses are just so dry. I get a nosebleed. I go to the bathroom, and I'm taking care of this nosebleed, and in walks Remy Warren, and he's like, "Dude, are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm good, man. No problem." And then in walks Alan Boland. He's like, "Dude, are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, man, no problem." And then in walks a couple of our corporate partners, and they're like, "Dude, are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, no problem." And I'm like, nobody else could walk in this bathroom. Like, everybody has walked in at the time my nose is pouring blood. And then Michael Waddell walks in, and he's like, "Dude, are you okay?" I'm like, "Good Lord, everybody and their cousins walking in the bathroom right now when I'm pouring blood." And of course, Michael, he's so fun. He's like, "Hey, dude, you know what you got to do? You got to tilt your head back, twist your wrist a little bit, hold your pinky this way, quit bleeding immediately." And I'm like, "Yeah, okay. Whatever, Michael."
Yeah, it's I tell you, it's a definite. I've learned, for me personally, it's taken a couple years, a couple trips out there to figure it out, and then now I kind of have a system of how I go about hunting out there. I live at sea level here, and we're hunting out up to almost 11,000 feet in some spots. So, and I've hunted Utah, I've hunted the Southwest desert of Utah, and, it's a huge environmental change for me.
Yeah.
So I have to plan accordingly. And I know, like, it takes me 4 days to get my lungs right. It takes me, about those 4 days and get my water right. Cause the first couple of days out there, I'm drinking 3 liters of water every day. And I just can't get enough water, in me until, after the 4th day. And then all of a sudden my body kind of figures it out. But my whole life is devoted to being the best I can be for, that couple month period that I'm out there. Honestly, that's, people have hobbies, and I guess, they can call this a hobby, but this is a way of life for me.
Yeah.
I drink beer and I hang out and stuff like that, but 4 months prior to me going out west, I don't drink anymore. I get my life devoted to that. Like, that is what I want to do the most. I want to kill giant elk and mule deer and things like that out there, and to be the best that you can be. That's how I feel like I have to be. And you don't have to be that. Some guys can walk right out of the truck and they shoot giant. The way it goes, and how that usually a young kid that's never hunted before. But for me, I feel like to get the best out of myself, there's a small window of opportunity in my life that I can be physically capable enough to handle some of the stuff. And I think I'm in that middle of that right now. And like you said, to handle that stuff out west is difficult, especially when you're not living there. So you have to kind of plan accordingly. I've gone, like, I do infusions and stuff here now, like vitamin infusion stuff before, like 2 weeks before I head out, and start getting a couple of those to try to get more hydrated. Cause I know, like, you go up the first day and you just start cramping like crazy, and it's just the moisture being sucked right out of you. It's pretty wild, actually. It's fascinating.
That's it's definitely a different world up there. Well, Frank, we appreciate you submitting your pictures to Pope and Young. We like to post them and get them up. Appreciate you spending some time with us today, and can't wait to hear about your next adventure up on the mountain.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me. I really do. Everyone around here, like you said, the guy Kroniak and these clowns here, but
we'll work to find you a new measure. We'll get to.
We had to remeasure this elk 4 times this year, because I think he's getting old, no, he's a good person, and the Pope and Young organization in general, what it does for hunting is pretty special, and it's been a staple of a lot of people's lives. Even indirectly, they don't understand when they say, "Oh, that deer scored 140, whatever." They don't know what they're saying, but that's a Pope and Young score. That's that's a staple of what an animal is, you know, and that's so ingrained in people, which I think is amazing. And I think it's really good to have people like yourselves out there speaking for us, you know, and speaking to us. So I appreciate your time, and thanks for having me on.
Well, thanks, Frank. We're going to continue to be the voice for America's bow hunters, and hope we're out there doing you proud.
Well, I appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
All right. Have a great day.
All right, later.